The stars glittered against the darkness of space as explosions bloomed like deadly flowers across the battlefield. Captain Stone watched from the bridge of his warship as enemy vessels burst into flames. His face showed no joy, only tired acceptance. This was just another day in a war that had lasted for 800 years. "Sir, we've broken through their defenses," his second-in-command reported. "The Veil forces are pulling back." Stone nodded. "And our losses? 3 destroyers, 1 carrier, over 2,000 dead." The captain closed his eyes for a moment. 2,000 more lives lost for a small piece of empty space that would probably change hands again within a month. The Dominion and the Veil had been locked in this dance of death for so long that no one remembered why it started. They fought because their fathers had fought, and their fathers before them. "Send the cleanup crews. Salvage what you can," Stone ordered, "and prepare a report for High Command." As his crew moved to obey, Stone stared at the planet below. Once it had been green and blue, full of life. Now it was a gray wasteland, bombed and poisoned by centuries of fighting. Nobody would ever live there again. Just another dead world among hundreds. Across the battlefield, Admiral Gray of the Veil forces watched her fleet retreat. Her silver uniform was perfect despite the 12-hour battle she had just lost. Her face showed no emotion as she gave orders to her officers. "Pull back to Sector 7. We will regroup there," she commanded. "And send me the data on the new weapon's performance." A young officer brought her a tablet. Gray looked at the numbers and allowed herself a small smile. The weapon had not won them the battle, but the test results were promising. Soon, they would have a tool that could break the stalemate with the Dominion once and for all. "Admiral, the scientists have asked for more test subjects," the officer said quietly. Gray nodded. "Take them from the prison planet. Use the ones who have been there longest." Nobody questioned her order. In war, hard choices had to be made. The Dominion had destroyed 3 Veil homeworlds in the last century alone. Whatever it took to win, they would do it. Far away from this conflict, on a small blue planet called Earth, a group of humans gathered in a control room. They watched with excitement as their first true starship prepared for its maiden voyage. "All systems are green," said the flight director. "Pioneer is ready for launch." Captain Wilson sat in the commander's chair of the Pioneer, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. This ship represented the hopes and dreams of his entire species, the first human vessel capable of traveling to other star systems. "Pre-jump checklist complete," reported his navigator. "Jump drive is charged and ready." Wilson took a deep breath. "Let's make history. Engage jump drive." The ship hummed as energy built up around it. In a flash of light, the Pioneer disappeared from Earth's solar system, making humanity's first step into the wider galaxy. None of them knew about the war that had been raging among the stars. They didn't know about the billions who had died, the planets destroyed, or the ancient hatred between the Veil and the Dominion. They didn't know that their simple exploration mission would soon put them in the middle of the oldest and deadliest conflict the galaxy had ever known. And they certainly didn't know that their arrival would change everything. As the Pioneer traveled through jump space, Captain Wilson looked at his crew with pride. Humans had dreamed of reaching the stars for thousands of years, and now they were finally doing it. Whatever they found out there, they would face it together. The ship's computer counted down to their exit from jump space, preparing to return to normal space in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Pioneer emerged into a region of space that humans had never seen before, and waiting for them, damaged and drifting, was a ship of alien design. Beyond it, the sensors detected more vessels approaching fast. Humanity's first contact was about to begin, in the middle of a war zone that had known nothing but death for 8 centuries. Captain Wilson stared at the view screen in shock. The alien ship drifting before them was clearly damaged, with parts of its hull torn open to space. Strange lights flickered across its surface as emergency systems fought to keep it intact. "Life signs?" Wilson asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Yes, sir," replied the science officer. "Multiple readings, but they're weak and fading." The bridge crew looked to their captain. This was humanity's first encounter with alien life, and it was happening in the worst possible way. No first contact protocols had prepared them for finding a dying ship in the middle of nowhere. "What about those other vessels approaching?" Wilson asked. 6 ships, heavily armed, on an intercept course. "They're moving fast, sir." Wilson made his decision quickly. "Prepare boarding teams. We're going to help them." His second-in-command looked worried. "Captain, we don't know who they are or what's happening here. The approaching ships might be friendly to them." "Look at the damage patterns," Wilson said, pointing to the screen. "Those are weapon impacts, and the approaching ships are in attack formation. I'm not going to sit here and watch them die." Within minutes, human rescue teams in spacesuits crossed to the alien vessel. They found corridors filled with smoke and bodies. The survivors were tall, thin beings with gray-blue skin and 4 arms. They seemed terrified at first, until they realized the humans were trying to help them. One alien, wearing what looked like an officer's uniform, managed to communicate through hand gestures. He pointed to the approaching ships and made a slashing motion across his throat. "Enemy." Wilson understood. "Get everyone you can back to our ship." By the time the other vessels arrived, the humans had evacuated 23 survivors to the Pioneer's medical bay. The alien officer, who they started calling Reed because of his thin, reed-like build, watched in confusion as human doctors worked to save his crew. The approaching ships hailed them. On the screen appeared a red-skinned alien with sharp features and black eyes. "Unknown vessel," the alien said in a harsh language that the ship's computer was just beginning to translate. "You have interfered in Dominion business. Surrender the Veil criminals immediately." Wilson stood tall. "I'm Captain Wilson of the Earth ship Pioneer. The people we rescued are under our protection." The alien commander looked surprised. "Earth? You are not known to us. Surrender the Veil now, or be destroyed with them." Reed had been brought to the bridge. He looked at Wilson with all 4 of his eyes wide. "Why help us?" he asked in broken words, having picked up bits of human language from the translation computer. Know us." Wilson turned to him. "Because it was the right thing to do." Reed didn't understand this concept. In the war between the Veil and the Dominion, there was no right thing. The neutral station hung in space between the territories of the Veil and the Dominion. It was a simple structure built by humans in just 3 months, a feat that impressed both alien races, who were used to projects taking years due to constant war disruptions. Ambassador Clark adjusted his simple gray suit and looked around the meeting room. The human delegation had deliberately kept everything plain. No fancy decorations, no weapons displays, no signs of power or wealth. Just a round table with equal chairs for everyone. "They're arriving," his assistant said. The Dominion representatives entered first. They moved with stiff military precision, their red skin darkening near their necks, a sign of tension the humans had learned. They wore elaborate uniforms covered with medals and rank insignia. The Veil delegates arrived second, keeping as much distance as possible from their enemies. Their blue-gray forms seemed to glide rather than walk, all 4 arms held in various formal positions that signify their status. They wore simple clothes but adorned themselves with intricate tattoos that told the stories of their ancestors. Clark smiled at both groups. "Welcome to Hope Station. Please, take your seats." Neither side moved, each waiting for the other to sit first. Clark sighed. In human custom, the host sits first, followed by guests in order of arrival. He sat down. Dominion representatives arrived first, so they may be seated next. This simple solution to the first of many protocol standoffs surprised both delegations. The Dominion members looked at each other, then slowly took their seats. The Veil followed, keeping their eyes on their enemies. "Let's begin," Clark said. "We're not here to discuss who started the war or who is right. We're here to talk about what everyone needs to move forward." A Dominion commander named Thax slammed his fist on the table. What we need is for the Veil to surrender the Coreward sectors and pay for their crimes against our colony worlds. The lead Veil diplomat, Mira, made a hissing sound. We will never surrender those sectors. They were ours before your kind burned our homeworld and slaughtered billions. Clark didn't try to silence them. Instead, he listened as centuries of grievances poured out. The humans took notes, asking occasional questions that surprised the aliens. How many of your people currently live in refugee conditions? Clark asked the Veil. What resources do you need most for your frontier settlements? He asked the Dominion. Neither side was used to these kinds of questions. Wars weren't about needs. They were about victory, revenge, and pride. After hours of heated exchanges, Clark stood up. I notice both sides keep mentioning access to the Coreward sector's mining resources. What if those resources were harvested by a neutral third party, humans, and distributed equally to both civilizations? The room went silent. Such a simple solution had never been considered. Impossible, Thax said finally. We cannot trust the Veil not to attack the mining operations, and we cannot trust the Dominion. Mira countered. Clark nodded. You don't trust each other, but do you trust us? We have no stake in your war. We just want to help end it. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, human scientists worked with technicians from both alien races. The atmosphere there was different, less hostile, more curious. Your power systems are incredible, said a human engineer to her Veil counterpart. But have you ever tried combining them with Dominion shield technology? The resonance patterns might enhance efficiency by 60%. The Veil technician looked surprised. We have never. It would be seen as. She couldn't find the words. Collaboration with the enemy, finished a Dominion scientist who had been listening. He moved closer, interest overcoming centuries of hatred. But theoretically, she's right. The patterns would match. For the first time, in 800 years, Veil and Dominion minds worked together on a problem. It was small, just a power system modification, but it represented something revolutionary. Back in the meeting room, Clark could sense the tension beginning to shift. It wasn't peace yet, far from it, but it was something that hadn't existed before, possibility. We propose a 3-month test period, he said. One mining operation, jointly protected. Equal distribution of resources. At the end, we evaluate and decide whether to continue. Thax and Mira looked at each other across the table. Neither wanted to be the first to agree. The Dominion will consider this proposal, Thax said finally. As will the Veil, Mira added. It wasn't much, but for a conflict that had lasted 8 centuries, it was a start. As the delegations left, Clark allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had taken its first step toward changing the galaxy. The explosion ripped through the neutral station with devastating force. Alarms blared as smoke filled the corridors. Ambassador Clark pulled himself up from the floor, ears ringing. Around him, humans and aliens lay wounded or dead. Report, he shouted into his communicator. Multiple explosions, came the shaky reply. Lower levels hit worst. We've lost at least 80 people. A Veil medical officer used all 4 arms to help wounded humans onto stretchers. Nearby, a Dominion security team was pulling people from the wreckage. For a brief moment, the ancient enemies worked side by side amid the destruction. That cooperation didn't last. Within hours, accusations flew between the Veil and Dominion representatives who had survived the attack. This was clearly a Dominion plot to destroy the peace talks, shouted a Veil diplomat, 2 of her arms waving in anger while the others formed fists. Lies, roared the Dominion commander. Your agents planted the bombs to blame us. Clark watched from his hospital bed as the fragile progress of the past weeks crumbled. The medical bay view screen showed Veil and Dominion fleets already moving toward battle positions. Both governments officially denied responsibility for the attack while preparing for war. On Earth, the news hit hard. Humans had believed they could help solve an ancient conflict, only to see their people killed for the effort. But instead of retreating, Earth's leaders made a decision that would change galactic history. General Hill stood before the World Council, her uniform crisp despite having not slept in 3 days. "The attack on our diplomatic mission cannot go unanswered," she said. "But we will not answer violence with more violence. Instead, I propose Operation Guardian." 1 week later, the first human defense fleet took position in space. Their ships were small compared to the massive warships of the Veil and Dominion, but they carried technology that neither alien race understood, a hybrid of systems reverse-engineered from both sides and improved by human innovation. The Veil and Dominion fleets approached each other, hundreds of warships preparing for what might be the largest battle in their centuries-long war. Between them, just 20 human vessels formed a line. "This is General Hill of Earth Defense Force. You will stand down immediately." The alien commanders laughed at this demand. What could 20 small ships do against their massive armadas? "You have 10 minutes to withdraw your vessels," Hill continued. "After that, we will be forced to demonstrate why that would have been your wisest choice." On the bridge of his flagship, Dominion Fleet Commander Rax sneered. "These humans are either brave or stupid. Prepare to." His weapons officer interrupted. "Sir, we're detecting unusual energy readings from the human ships." In the Veil command ship, Admiral Gray received similar reports. "What are they doing?" she wondered. The answer came 8 minutes later. When neither fleet withdrew, small objects launched from the human ships. They'd moved too fast to track, spreading throughout both fleets. Some kind of primitive missile. Rax wondered. "Scan for explosives." "No explosive materials detected," his officer replied. "They appear to be drones." The tiny machines attached themselves to the hulls of the alien warships. At first, nothing happened. Then, across both fleets, weapon systems began shutting down. Shield generators failed. Navigation computers displayed nonsense. On the human command ship, General Hill watched the confusion spread. "Now broadcasting on all frequencies," she ordered. Every screen on every ship in both fleets suddenly showed the same image. Security footage from the neutral station. It showed figures in environmental suits, not Veil or Dominion, but a third species, planting the explosives. "We have identified the true perpetrators of the attack," Hill announced. "They call themselves the Harvesters. For centuries, they have been selling weapons to both sides, growing rich from your endless war. The recent peace talks threatened their profits, so they acted to ensure the fighting would continue." Stunned silence filled the command decks of both fleets. The evidence was clear, impossible to deny. For 800 years, they had been manipulated, their hatred stoked and maintained by outside forces. Hill continued, "You can continue fighting if you wish, but know that you've been pawns in someone else's game. Or you can join us in hunting down those truly responsible for so much death." Rax and Gray, leaders of forces that had sought to destroy each other for centuries, found themselves facing the same shocking truth. The real enemy had never been each other. Captain Bell stood on the bridge of the human flagship Peacekeeper*, watching as confusion spread through the alien fleets. The small drones had done their work perfectly. Weapons systems across hundreds of warships were offline, leaving the mighty vessels helpless. "Open a channel to both fleet commanders," Bell ordered. The faces of Rax and Gray appeared on split screens. Both looked furious and bewildered. "What have you done to our ships?" demanded Rax. Bell smiled. "We didn't destroy them. We didn't kill anyone. We simply changed the rules." "This is impossible," Gray said, her 4 eyes blinking rapidly in distress. "Our systems are the most advanced in the galaxy." "That's the problem," Bell replied. "You've been fighting each other for so long that you've become predictable to each other. You've developed blind spots that we, as outsiders, could easily see." Bell nodded to her communications officer, who sent a data packet to both fleets. "We're transmitting schematics showing the critical flaws in your systems. Your engineers will confirm what I'm saying." On both command ships, technical officers hurriedly checked the human data. Their expressions shifted from doubt to shock. "It's true," Gray's chief engineer reported. "They found weaknesses we never considered." Bell continued. "Now about these harvesters. Our intelligence teams identified them after analyzing trade patterns across the war zone. They've been selling slightly defective weapons to both sides for centuries, ensuring the conflict would never end, but never allowing either side to gain enough advantage to win." On the screens, the alien commander's anchor visibly shifted from the humans to this new enemy. "We've located their main base in the Outer Rim," Bell said. "They're preparing to flee now that their operation is exposed. The choice is yours. Continue fighting each other over ancient grudges, or join us in bringing the real criminals to justice." Silence hung over the communication channel. 800 years of hatred couldn't be erased in a moment. But the evidence was undeniable. Rax spoke first. "The Dominion does not forgive betrayal. These harvesters have cost us millions of lives." Gray nodded slowly. "For once, we agree. The Veil demands justice as well." Bell hid her relief. "Our drones will disengage and restore your systems, except for major weapons. As a precaution, those will remain offline until we reach the Harvester base." The journey to the Outer Rim was tense. Human ships positioned themselves between the Veil and Dominion vessels, ready to intervene if ancient hatreds flared again. But a strange calm had settled over both fleets. For the first time in centuries, they had a common enemy. The Harvester base was massive, a sprawling space station hidden in an asteroid field. Its defenses were formidable, designed to repel any attack. In the command center of the Peacekeeper representatives from all three species gathered around a holographic display. "Their outer defenses are too strong for a direct assault," a Dominion tactical officer observed. "We could approach from below the ecliptic plane," suggested a Veil strategist, pointing at the display with two of her four hands. Bell watched as former enemies began working together, combining their knowledge of Harvester technology and tactics. The humans added their outside perspective, suggesting approaches neither alien race had considered. "What if we used the asteroids themselves as cover?" Bell proposed. Small strike teams could approach undetected. The plan came together quickly. Veil stealth technology, Dominion breaching tactics, and human coordination. It would be dangerous, but it could work. As the planning session ended, an elderly Dominion commander approached Bell. "In 8 centuries of war, we never once sat at a table with the Veil to plan anything except their destruction." Bell nodded. "Sometimes it takes an outsider to see the obvious." "And what is obvious to you, human?" the commander asked. Bell looked through the viewport at the stars beyond. "That you're more alike than different. That your people are tired of endless war. And that together, you could build something greater than either of you could alone." The commander considered this. "Perhaps, if we survive tomorrow." Bell smiled. "That's always the first step, isn't it? Surviving tomorrow. Then you can think about building a better future." Around them, humans, Veil and Dominion continued working together, preparing for the coming battle. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was the beginning of possibility. The attack on the Harvester base began at what humans would call dawn, though in space, such terms held little meaning. Small strike teams, each a mix of humans, Veil and Dominion specialists, approached the massive station using asteroids as cover. "Team Alpha in position," reported a human soldier. "Team Beta ready," came the voice of a Veil commando. "Team Gamma awaiting signal," added a Dominion officer. Director Wells, the mission commander, took a deep breath. "Begin Operation Truth." The teams moved with precision that belied their recent formation. Veil technology cloaked their approach. Dominion breaching charges created entry points. Human tactical coordination kept everyone moving together despite centuries of ingrained distrust. Inside the station, they found evidence that shocked even the most hardened veterans. Massive storage rooms held weapons and supplies intended for both the Veil and Dominion, deliberately designed with fatal flaws. Communication centers monitored the war, with analysts tracking battle lines and casualties as if they were nothing more than numbers in a profit equation. Most damning of all were the historical records. For nearly 8 centuries, the Harvesters had worked to keep the war going, sometimes helping the Veil when the Dominion gained too much advantage, sometimes aiding the Dominion when the Veil seemed close to victory. "They've been playing us against each other," a Dominion commander said, his voice hollow with shock and rage. A Veil officer stared at the proof of manipulation. "Our people. So many dead. For this." The Harvester leaders were captured trying to escape in hidden shuttles. They were a species neither the Veil nor Dominion had ever truly noticed, short, gray beings who had always presented themselves as neutral traders and information brokers. When confronted with evidence of their centuries-long deception, the Harvester leader showed no remorse. "War is profitable," he said simply. "Peace is not." Back on Earth, the World Council convened an emergency session. The capture of the Harvester base had created an opportunity, but the fragile cooperation between the Veil and Dominion could collapse at any moment. "We must act now," said Director Wells, addressing the Council. "I propose the establishment of a Galactic Reconciliation Council, not just for negotiating peace, but for actively rebuilding what's been destroyed." The plan was bold. Mixed communities of Veil and Dominion citizens working together under human guidance to reconstruct worlds damaged by the war. Former soldiers retrained as builders. Weapons factories converted to produce tools and machinery for reconstruction. When presented to the alien leaders, the response was predictably skeptical. "You expect our people to live side by side?" asked a Dominion High Commander. "After all this time?" Wells nodded. "Starting with small pilot projects on border worlds. Voluntary participation only." "It will never work," a Veil elder insisted. "The hatred runs too deep." "Perhaps," Wells acknowledged. "But we've identified something interesting in our surveys. The ordinary citizens of both your civilizations, the ones who've been fighting and dying in this war, they're tired. They want something different for their children." This was the human advantage. They had talked not just to leaders, but to common people. They had seen the weariness, the quiet desire for change that neither government had recognized. 1 year, Wells proposed. 1 year of joint reconstruction projects. If they fail, you can return to your war. What do you have to lose? Reluctantly, both governments agreed to the experiment. No one, not even the optimistic humans, expected quick results. 800 years of hatred couldn't be erased by good intentions. The first joint settlement was established on a border world called Harmony, a name chosen by humans that made both alien species uncomfortable. 100 Veil, 100 Dominion, and 50 human mediators. The first week was tense. The second week saw 3 fights break out. By the third week, most participants weren't speaking to each other. But then something changed. A Dominion child became sick with a disease that Dominion medicine couldn't treat, but Veil healers could. A Veil family's home collapsed in a storm, and Dominion engineers helped rebuild it, their structural techniques better suited to the planet's conditions. Small moments. Tiny cracks in the wall of hatred. The humans noticed and encouraged them, creating more opportunities for cooperation without forcing anything. When Wells visited after 2 months, she found something unexpected. Veil and Dominion children playing together while their parents watched with expressions of bewildered tolerance. "It's not peace," a human mediator told her, "but it's a beginning." Admiral Mason stood at the viewport of the Galactic Peace Corps flagship, watching the stars. 50 years had passed since humans had first encountered the ancient war between the Veil and the Dominion. In that time, everything had changed. The ship's communication officer approached. "Admiral, we're receiving the final confirmations. All 37 member species will attend the ceremony." Mason nodded, feeling the weight of history. No human had imagined this moment when they first stumbled into the conflict. They had just wanted to help, to do what seemed right. Now, they stood at the center of the greatest peace the galaxy had ever known. The massive warships that once filled space had been rebuilt as exploration vessels, colony transports, and disaster relief carriers. Their weapons replaced with scientific equipment, their military crews now working alongside former enemies. Mason's first officer, a young Vale named Trell, joined him at the viewport. Unlike older members of her species, Trell had grown up in the new era. She had been raised in one of the first mixed settlements, where Vale and Dominion children played together and learned each other's languages. Hard to believe what it was like before, Trell said, all four of her eyes looking at the peaceful fleet gathered outside. My grandfather still won't talk about the war years. Some wounds take more than a lifetime to heal, Mason replied. But we've made a good start. The ship approached the gleaming space station, where the ceremony would take place. Unlike the simple, functional structure that had hosted the first peace talks, this was a marvel of combined engineering. Vale power systems, Dominion structural design, and human innovation had created something none could have built alone. Inside the Grand Council chamber, representatives from 37 species gathered. Some had merely been destroyed as collateral damage in the ancient war. Others were new allies discovered during joint exploration missions. All had found a place in the emerging galactic community. The Vale Supreme Elder and the Dominion High Commander entered together, something unimaginable 50 years earlier. Both were too young to have fought in the war, part of the new generation that had grown up knowing peace. Mason took his position on the speaking platform. As he looked out at the assembled delegates, he remembered the words of Captain Wilson from the first contact, because it was the right thing to do. Such a simple statement, yet it had changed everything. Today we formalize what we have been building for 50 years, Mason began. The United Galactic Alliance is not just a treaty or a government. It is a promise that we make to each other and to future generations, that we will not repeat the mistakes of the past. The chamber was silent, every being present aware of the history they were making. Humanity did not come to the stars seeking power or territory, Mason continued. We came with curiosity and hope. When we found centuries of war, we did not see enemies and allies. We saw people trapped in a cycle they couldn't break alone. Sometimes, the greatest strength is a fresh perspective. As he spoke, a message arrived from Earth's long-range scouts. A new civilization had been detected at the galaxy's edge, making their first tentative steps into interstellar space. We have just received word of new friends waiting to be met, Mason announced. The Alliance's first act will be to welcome them peacefully, ensuring they never know the horror of war that defined this galaxy for so long. The chamber erupted in approval. The Vale and Dominion representatives, once bitter enemies, stood together to cast the first unified vote of the new alliance. After the ceremony, Mason found a quiet moment alone. He touched the small piece of metal he always carried, a fragment from the original Pioneer ship that had first encountered the Vale vessel so long ago. A young Dominion aide approached. Admiral, the welcome mission is ready for your final approval. Mason nodded. Make sure they understand. We approach with open hands, not raised weapons. We offer friendship, not demands. The aide looked puzzled. Is there any other way to make first contact? Mason smiled. That perhaps was humanity's greatest victory. Not ending the war, but changing how future generations thought about peace. To this young person, born in the new era, the idea of greeting strangers with anything but goodwill seemed incomprehensible. No, Mason said. There isn't any other way worth considering. As his ship prepared to join the welcoming fleet, Mason looked out at the stars once more. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy with weapons or technology. They had transformed it with something much simpler and more powerful, a different way of seeing, a refusal to accept that things couldn't change, and the courage to take the first step toward something better. The war that had seemed endless had finally found its end, and the peace that followed promised to last far longer than the conflict that preceded it.